Hey guys, welcome to Bar Z. My name's Stan. Today we're going to talk about a couple of Hotshot items. First of all is heating elements. Let's go over to the bench and see how they get wound and see what they look like before you install them. Okay, so we got some elements here, and I thought I'd show you kind of what they look like. We double wind the ends. The last 8 inches of each element gets double wound, and what that does is that cuts the resistance in half, essentially. So this section of the heating element isn't even going to get hot at all, and that allows you to make a connection without your connection getting hot. The element itself is wound around a 3/8 rod, and then after it's we do it on the lathe, and what you do is you set your carriage feed rate to the same diameter as the wire. In this case it's 50 thousandths, 050. So after you wind it around the 3/8 rod, when it releases, you come up with right at a 1/2 inch OD on this wire. So that's basically how we run element wires. This is actually this is an 1800 watt element here, and you test. You put an ohm meter at the ends and test your ohms, and you have to stretch the spring slightly so they're not touching when you're doing your tests. But that's how you wind an element. And so this is an 1800 watt for a duplex. And then these little fellas here, we use actually a smaller gauge wire, because this is only a 400 watt element. There's a tiny little fella here. Okay, but still gets wound around the same mandrel on the lathe, and again sets your carriage feed rate to the same diameter as the wire, and then you double wind the ends again, and you can check your ohms, and your ohms and your voltage will dictate your wattage. So just check a chart. Math is pretty easy, and if you look at the charts online for nichrome wire, you get the ohms per foot, and just do the math on it, and it's pretty easy to make your own elements. So that's enough for 6 duplexes. All right. Okay, so I hope that's helpful for some of you DIY guys. You could wind that by hand around a 3/8 rod. If you only had one to make, the number that I'm making, I absolutely want the lathe to do it. But if you just set your carriage to the same diameter as the wire per revolution, it works out really well. All right, next up, I promised you that we'd take a look at some new SSRs when they came in. Let's go put an eyeball on those. Okay, so we've got a new type of SSR we're using. If you guys know, I use the IDEX, these little fellas here, and this is a pretty typical solid state relay. Power in, power out, control voltage to fire the contacts in the SSR. These can be pulsed, so you can actually give it a pulsing signal, a fluttered signal, and it will make your resistive load kind of variable. All right, but they give really good control. So everyone knows this is what I've been using, but like say on a duplex, you know what? I need 2 of them. Come on, get out of there. There we go. So I need 2 of these fellas. And within a control box, I've got one that I mount there, and another one that I mount over here. And they get up on, they're going to get up on, heat sinks. Put them up on heat sinks inside. So things get a little crowded in there. So this is what I found, which I'm pretty excited about. This is a 2-pole SSR with independent controls. So what does this enable us to do? First of all, we've got L1 and L2 incoming power, so we can put two. If we've got a 240 volt, we can run L1 and L2 in there, and then run out to a high voltage coil. And then the control is separated down here, which is kind of neat, and I'll tell you why. Physically, these things take the same bolt pattern. They both have the metal back for the heatsink. The new unit's a little bit taller. But now on a duplex, I've got two two things to run, but I can run that right there. And I don't have to pop out my auxiliary hole, and I can use my breaker over there. But on a duplex, what I need to do is run 110 volt to L1 and L2, and then run off to one coil with one and another coil to the other one. So I've got two independent loads. But what I want to do now is I want to control them individually. So I want to run one of my controllers to these two terminals and run the other controller to these two terminals. And these contacts will work independently. So one controller can be doing its thing and the other controller can be doing its thing. Not a problem. Now let's say I had a 240 volt unit. I'd run L1 and L2 in here, run out to a 240 volt coil, and then all I got to do is tandem these up or run them in parallel, and then we're going to fire both contacts at the same time, flutter them, everything else. But space savings, and they cost a little bit more, but the space savings is worth it. Completely worth it for me. So, you know, we don't have a lot of room to work with in these little control boxes, and I try to keep everything compact. So, pretty happy about the new SSRs. Okay, so the new SSRs are pretty exciting for me. I don't know anyone that gets really excited over electronics, but it's pretty exciting for me. You know, it saves space, and my control box, I really don't want to increase the size of my control box. There's really no need in it. So the space savings is there. With a 2-pole unit, you can control each pole individually to run 2 separate environments, or if you've got a 240 volt unit, you can run them in tandem and open and close the switches together and run a 240 volt unit. So they're not that much more money, and the space savings is definitely a factor. So I'll leave a link below to the Carlos Garvasi SSRs that are going in the duplex and in the 240 volt units. Okay, last up, we're going to talk about the 1200 and my progress on that. So far, I have settled on 4,000 watts. That's going to be my first test at 4,000 to see if I can make it work with still on a 20 amp circuit. So it's right in there. It's going to be pulling about 16 amp on 240 volt circuit. It is progressing. We're going to have it put together here pretty quick, and I can do some initial testing. When I'm happy with it, I'm going to take it with me to Texas so you guys can put your hands on it at the Good of the Land Fest. So I'll have that on display there. After that, it's going to take a trip with Ray Cornelia and go home with him. He's the lucky recipient of the prototype, and then he's going to try to break it. So if I can't break it and Ray can't break it, I think it's pretty solid. Between the two of us, we're pretty rough on equipment. So look for the 1200 coming soon. We'll see you at the Good of the Land Fest. I'll drop a link below for that too. If you guys are interested in going, it's going to be a good time. That's towards the end of October. All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.